Hi guys, this is Hillary, and this is my presentation on project-based learning, which is the topic of my best practices inquiry project. So first of all, what is project-based learning? Project-based learning is an approach to teaching and learning that brings curriculum in line with the way the world really works. I love that quote. It's very simple and it really gets to the heart of project-based learning. And here's another a little more involved quote that goes into more detail about project-based learning. So some key features. I've got a list here that you can certainly read through for yourself. But some key features are that, it requires students to have content knowledge and process skills and to put those together. It involves asking challenging questions that are complex and rich in order to investigate meaningful problems. It involves a sustained period of inquiry, which means that students are engaged in seeking information, making sense of that information, synthesizing it, and perhaps developing additional questions along the way. And this is really reflective of authentic real-world tasks, tools, and skills and real-world impact. So it's showing students how what they're learning in school is actually connected to the real world around them. Likewise, project-based learning should be relevant to students' lives and their interests. This is going to help them remain motivated and engaged as they work through the challenges associated with this type of learning. And that should also involve student choice in terms of how they want to work together in their groups and what they choose to create in order to express their learning. Also, another important part of project-based learning is ongoing opportunities for reflection and opportunities for feedback and revision along the way. So students need to have opportunities to reflect on challenges they've faced, problems they've run into, how they've solved those problems, and to get feedback from teachers and peers along the way, so they're not just getting to the end of the project and only getting feedback on their final work. Finally, their final project should be shared publicly, which just means it needs to be shared beyond the classroom context. And this is an important part of showing students that their learning is relevant beyond the classroom. So that's a lot of information right there. But the two key questions you always want to keep in mind when you're dealing with project-based learning are, is the work personally meaningful to the student? So is it relevant to them? Is it interesting to them? And also, does the work fulfill an educational purpose? Meaning, is it connected to curriculum content, standards, and skills? So both of these components are truly essential for project-based learning to work the way that it is intended to. Now this is a nice little graphic from the Buck Institute of Education, and they are one of the top sources for project-based learning today. They have a lot of great information to share, and it's very similar to the key features that I shared with you just a few moments ago, but just a sort of graphic representation of those key features. And to go along with the key features of how to design project-based learning, this is a graphic that shows some of the teaching practices that are essential to project-based learning. So aligning with standards, creating a culture in which students are comfortable taking risks and addressing challenging questions, managing students' activities, scaffolding student learning so that they can be successful in this type of environment, assessing student learning both formatively and summatively, and communicating how work will be assessed, engaging and coaching students throughout the process, and designing and then planning very intentionally, which leads to the key knowledge and understanding of and success from project-based learning. So it's also important to understand what project-based learning is not. So it's not just doing projects, not just standalone hands-on activities, and it's not just researching a topic and making a presentation. It has an added layer of the inquiry process, of dealing with complicated questions, and also connecting with student interests and things that students find intrinsically motivating. So why should you use PBL? Well, research supports PBL and finds that it increases students' long-term retention of content, helps them perform better on tests, and improves their problem-solving skills and collaboration skills, and improves their attitudes towards learning. But of course, this is only true when project-based learning is implemented well. Some other benefits of project-based learning is that it encourages interdisciplinary learning, so connections between subjects. It does increase student motivation and connects learning to the real world. And this really helps students to be able to tackle types of problems that they may face in the workplace or in college or in other contexts after they graduate. And as a personal plug, it also gives librarians many opportunities to collaborate with teachers. So here are some quotes from students who have engaged in project-based learning that I thought were kind of powerful. And I will let you read these on your own. All right, so some keys to success with project-based learning. So Executive Director of the Buck Institute for Education, John Mergendoller, suggests that the key to success with project-based learning is really preparation, making sure that the teacher thinks through what kind of skills and knowledge will the students need in order to succeed, and then evaluating their own students, thinking, do my students have those skills right now? Or are there certain things I need to do in order to scaffold them, provide guidance, give them practice to develop those skills and the knowledge that they'll need to be successful in project-based learning? And research supports this. Research says that there should be a realistic problems that's aligned with student skills and interests, and that the teacher needs to clearly define what content and skills they expect students to show. Structured group work is really important, so not just throwing students into groups and letting them do whatever they want, but really structuring the groups so that there are interdependent roles and individual accountability. Making sure that there are multiple levels of assessment with lots of opportunities for feedback and revision along the way, and making sure that you are assessing process, content, and collaboration, not just looking at that final product. And also making sure that teachers have adequate support and resources as they tackle this type of learning experience. So along that line, so here are some of the things that teachers need to be successful. First, they need adequate training. That means ongoing professional development, not just a one-shot workshop. Support from administrators in taking risks. They need to be willing to act as more of a coach instead of a lecturer, and to have a clear idea of how the projects will be assessed, and to communicate their expectations clearly to students. And students really need adequate background knowledge. This is crucial to their success in being able to ask good questions and understand the type of information that they need to seek out and to make sense of the information that they find. They certainly need a personal connection to the topic, which is going to keep them motivated throughout the process. And then some of the skills that they really need to have, they need to be able to form authentic, complex questions. They need to have information literacy skills that will help them in seeking and making sense of information. They need to be able to work in groups in a productive, collaborative way, to manage their time, and to tolerate ambiguity and some bumps along the road, because sometimes project-based learning takes some twists and turns, and students need to be prepared to evaluate where they are at each stage of the project and determine if they need to proceed as planned or if they need to make a new plan. So some pitfalls to be aware of. First of all, PBL light. So this really means just skimming the surface of a topic, or posing questions, or having students pose questions that are really straightforward and that avoid ambiguity or complexity. And the problem with this type of scenario is that it really does not make for very rigorous academic learning. There's not going to be a lot of deep learning going on, and deep learning is kind of the point and the hallmark of project-based learning when it's done well. And then other common pitfalls are just inadequate preparation, as I've mentioned previously, and also starting too big, so expecting too much from teachers too soon. Some common misconceptions. Some people think that project-based learning is limited to high-tech sites, but really that's not true. Technology certainly helps in the process and can be a really great opportunity to use technology in different ways with students. But even if you're limited in your technology options, you can still work with the idea of students asking authentic, meaningful questions and pursuing information that will help them make sense of those questions. And then some people think that PBL is only for the secondary grades, but really it's great for those elementary students who are especially stuck on the question why. They want to know why things are the way they are. They want to know why something works a particular way. So they have this natural inquisitiveness that is really connected with the heart of project-based learning. So project-based learning and the school library. It's a perfect match. And I found this quote from one of the school library practitioner journals talking about what drives project-based learning. And surprise, surprise, what do these things have in common? The school librarian is an expert in all of them. So the librarian can really contribute to project-based learning through collaborative planning and teaching. While the teacher serves as a content knowledge expert, the librarian is already an expert in information literacy and process skills, and students need to be able to have both of those experts in place, either as coaches or providing explicit instruction along the way as they seek out answers to the questions that they pose. Librarians also have expertise in the inquiry process and inquiry learning, and that's critical to project-based learning. And librarians are really in the practice of seeing the bigger picture, making connections across subjects, which plays right into project-based learning's interdisciplinary nature. And then also certainly librarians are great at helping to integrate technology and tapping into student interests. So the library space itself, the physical space, is great for brainstorming, a lot of tools in the library that students can use, flexibly able to rearrange the space to meet the needs of small groups. They can provide the hardware for technology, the computers, tablets, and even creative presentation tools like green screens. And then in addition, there's also the virtual space of the library, where librarians curate a lot of virtual tools, collaborative tools that will help students as they gather and make sense of the information that they are finding on their topics and their questions. So PBL also, of course, benefits the library. It really raises awareness of librarians' expertise in inquiry learning, in ways that they can collaborate with teachers, in being able to provide a model for how project-based learning instruction might work if certain teachers are reluctant to try it. Maybe if they see the librarian implement it, then they'll be more willing to try it. So it really helps to promote this idea of the library as a learning commons at the heart of a school. And finally, some additional resources to share with you, no matter where you are in your PBL journey. The Buck Institute for Education has some great resources, so check out that resources page. Then there's also the Cult of Pedagogy is a blog, and they've got some good resources to help teachers get started with PBL. And Edutopia has a really helpful research review that's great to share with administrators. So that's it for me, and I just have some references that I'll show you here on these last couple slides. And thank you so much for listening, and I hope you've enjoyed this presentation.